Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webcast. My name is Mike Otranto, and I'm a strategic account specialist at Microsoft. I'm also joined on today's webcast with Jim Patterson, who leads in a business development role. Today, we're going to focus on the benefits of moving to Project Online. After the webinar, you will receive an email with a copy of the recording and the slide deck so you can review. The line will not be open for questions, but you can type in your questions via the chat feature. So if you want to know more about Microsoft and who we are today, we are a joint venture that was founded in 2002. We provide consulting, business process outsourcing, managed services, and global staff support for staffing. We are a triple certified Microsoft partner. Less than 1% of partners ever have that designation. We are certified in project portfolio management, collaboration and content, and cloud productivity. From a project and portfolio management standpoint, we have a deep expertise in Project Online and Project Server. So we have a lot of experience helping organizations maximize their efficiency and technological advantage. We have a footprint all over North America and internationally. I will now hand off the webcast to Jim Patterson. Jim?
All right, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Patterson, and I'll be presenting today to you the benefits and outcomes of moving to Project Online. So with that, let's move forward. When we look at it, a lot of project management today is being driven by this whole movement of digital transformation. As you can see here through PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC CEO survey, 86% of CEOs consider digital their #1 priority strategically in their organizations. And to execute on that and to be successful at it, of which not everyone is being successful, they say 84% have a high chance of failure. Digital transformation really occurs through the execution of projects and programs in a large scale that touch all parts of the organization. So part of what we're talking today really brings the current value to organizations. If we look at just the landscape today and what the Project Management Institute has found in the pulse of the profession, the high cost of low performance as it relates to project management, is that projects often fall short of their potential. People are using a lot of different methods to do these things, and that's part of the reasons that the tools and maybe the approaches and the segmentation of those is impacting success. So if you look at this box here and you look at the matrix and you look at the vertical y-axis of do the right projects, that means are you selecting the projects that are adding value strategically to the organization? And the Project Management Institute tells us that 43% of surveyed companies report high alignment between projects and strategy, meaning we're selecting projects that support those strategies. Only 43% really have an effective high alignment in that regard. So that's the extent to which success on current outcomes is measured on that axis. And then if we look at the x-axis or the horizontal axis of do the projects right, meaning executing well, 62% of projects meet their goals, and that number essentially has not improved or changed since 2012, meaning we're leaving a lot of success on the table or potential success on the table, just as well as we're leaving a lot of strategic alignment on the table. So if you look at it, everything outside of those boxes in that light gray area is really untapped potential for us to improve as organizations. And hopefully this digital transformation wave and the ability to leverage things that we couldn't leverage before will help us achieve that. Also, in this modern age, we've learned some things. You know, project management being managed by PMOs the standards for success aren't the same as what they've always been. Some of the lessons learned is, you know, early on, PMOs were established to really implement just enough process and be able to do so that we could have consistent delivery on a consistent basis. But nowadays, successfully delivering process to the organization doesn't mean a whole lot. It's really about, are we delivering value? Delivering the project isn't always enough, meaning delivering something and saying, here you go, isn't the definition of success anymore. Are we delivering projects that are delivering the right thing? And are they delivering value to the organization? And if not, maybe why are we doing those types of things? Also, resource capacity always matters. A lot of organizations in the past would always say, we just get it done and have a real heroic mentality in those regards. But at the end of the day, it really is no free lunch. If you don't have the resources to do the projects that you want to do, or you're selecting or taking on or committing to more than you have the bandwidth to do, something suffers, whether it be scope, schedule, cost, quality, whatever it might be. Also, dependencies now are part of the constraints. We're getting involved in, let's use the example of digital transformation projects. These are large programs made up of a myriad of sub-projects that need to go on. And dependencies between these are not just are part of your constraints, just like resources are a constraint. If you don't get certain things done technologically, process-wise, or business-wise, you can't go on to do other things. So the dependency management is very important. Also, troubled projects require immediate attention. So without current visibility into current states and understanding very early on that we're having problems, you think about this in an analogy of a poorly behaved child. If you don't address that quickly, it can escalate into something that you can no longer control. And also you need to speak the language of the business, meaning the business goals and objectives and strategies also need to be the goals and strategies and vision of the project management organization. And ultimately, we're going to show you software today and talk about Project Online, but software is one component of the equation. It's really about the integration of people, process, and technology that's going to make us successful moving forward into the future. So as we follow different analysts and people that are following the PPM marketplace, the trends moving towards 2020 are the move to the cloud, which is really digitizing or making the PMOs more digital as part of that digital transformation. It's the rise of Agile is another one. Agile methodologies supplanting the waterfall methodologies in many cases when it comes to things like software development. But also this pace of change of technology and just the way the economy moves and the needs have changed have way surpassed the way it's been in the past. So this is breeding the need to have more and more rapid new product development, and that spawns more projects in that genre. Also connected systems, meaning since we have all different types of work in this world and we have teams and distributed teams, oftentimes people are using different systems, spreadsheets, et cetera. And instead of having silos of information, the idea of making those things work better together so that we have a more consistent way of doing things is becoming more and more important as we move forward into the future. And visualizing data, being able to take the information and really boil it down and have it pre-analyzed and presented to us in formats that give us information and suggestions and analysis rather than just a data dump like we used to have when we used to dump things to Excel. Those are things that where things are going today. And then AI and predictive analytics, as you know, with Cortana and Microsoft, Alexa and other AI platforms, we're getting to where we have assistants now to help us analyze, give us suggestions, and also provide predictive analysis so that we can see where we're headed before we get there. Now, Microsoft is really following these trends. I mean, if you look at a strong decade of innovations from Microsoft, we've gone from the desktop Microsoft project through more making it part of the Microsoft Office, SharePoint integration, then providing a consolidated PPM solution with Project Server, and then really moving PPM into the cloud in 2013 initially. But the advances after that, as we add more and more capabilities, integration and functionality and accessibility through the cloud, you can see the pace of delivery of new features and functions is accelerating, and it has to now to meet the demands, as opposed to in the past where they'd implement or put out a new server release with new capabilities about every 3 years on average. Now with a continuous delivery in the cloud, we're getting access to current features and functions as the market demands. And just from a continuous PPM innovation perspective, just look at some of the things that are being put into the Microsoft Cloud and how it relates to PPM and Project Online, whether it be reporting and analytics with native integration and outputs to Power BI, whether it be enhanced resource capacity planning using resource engagements, the addition of Office 365 Planner for more Kanban-based, lightweight type of planners, out-of-the-box reporting, and even in the addition of mobility and things like that. These things are happening at a rapid pace where on the on-prem solutions in the past, you had to wait to get those capabilities. So Microsoft PPM, which is Project Online today in the cloud, is really best equipped to transform strategies into high impact incomes for your organization. These are end-to-end solutions from a PPM perspective, all the way from the ideation stage, where you can capture ideas and vet them and decide which ones you want to invest time and effort into to plan from a business case perspective in more detail, and then do high-level planning where you can actually do strategic alignment and intelligent selection and decide to work on the right things. Then all the execution pieces that are in there, scheduling and tracking and collaboration on all the aspects of communications and documents and artifacts and managing issues and risks and change requests and those types of things. And then just the insights from a reporting perspective, as we talked about a little bit here just shortly on the Power BI and reporting side of things. And then with the Microsoft Cloud Platform, just the extensibility in this cloud platform. And we'll talk about ways that you can actually extend this to tailor it and actually make it very specific to your organization and your processes and your requirements. So let's talk about the ideation piece and what's in the platform today. One is you can establish standards and a common intake and governance process using Microsoft PPM. So you can use workflows to ensure that different project types go through a consistent intake process and their life cycle. You can also have custom templates and out-of-the-box templates for project schedule content and the types of workspace content that you'd have, and also just custom views and reports for simplified communications of what's going on with those projects, and really adhering to best practices using these types of capabilities. You can also translate strategy into actionable goals, meaning there's the ability to set up business drivers or strategies to which you can align your projects to, helping us quantify what are the highest value projects for our organization, and then assign weights to those so that as we're deciding between projects and what's going to make the cut within our budget and resource constraints, we can actually help us select the right projects. And then capture business demand, the ones we're really serious about. We can then capture all the demand input and fully functional business cases online so that we can have all the information we need to make good business decisions, and then ultimately helpfully track through the execution stage to make sure that we're meeting the goals and the objectives of those business cases, and even later on see if we've realized those benefits going on. And these types of inputs, forms, and data elements can be easily configured to meet the needs of what you're doing and possibly doing just in documents today. So it also encourages ideation, so we can even capture stuff even before you're ready to invest in that kind of business case information. Early on, you could have different folks from all around the organization, both internal and external customers, provide you suggestions which you might, through some data that's entered, determine whether or not it's worth pursuing even further. But the idea is that you can vote on these ideas, you can actually put approval structures through these ideas and decide what gets promoted to a full-on requested or promoted project with a business case. And the idea with mobility, you can capture these ideas on the go as they strike you, as the mood hits you. And then once we do that, we can start be given the high-level planning, from more high-level planning down to more tactical planning as well. And the idea here is you can take some of that strategic alignment information and help identify and visualize the impact that different projects may have, and be able to quantify and understand the benefits, cost, and strategic alignment dimensions of a proposed project. And then you can model what-if scenarios and use those data points to have Project Online intelligently give you information on what projects you should do within certain budget and resource constraints based upon the prioritization and strategic alignment that's there. And the idea is that you can turn these scenarios and use a variety of different permutations, even compare different scenarios against one another, so that we can ultimately work towards optimized portfolio, and then really further our cause towards making sure that we're working on the right projects. If you look down below, according to Forrester, renowned analyst firm, 75% of surveyed companies experience better strategic and organizational alignment with Microsoft PPM, hence Project Online. Also, from the planning perspective, after we decide which projects to work on from that high-level planning, we can develop more realistic project plans, meaning we can get started fast with enterprise project types that have templates for schedules in them with the logic already built out, and potentially our methodology or approaches baked into those so that we can have consistency on the way we deliver the project and the way we structure our plans with work breakdown structures, et cetera. And we can even forecast role-based demand for resources early on when we don't know who is going to be working on the project. And we can even devise realistic project plans that consider all dimensions, like resource availability, task dependencies, and other things that factor into building a good schedule and a plan. And then the resource dimension. One of the things about doing this to support your goals is to make sure that you're doing thoughtful resource management, not only as we intake projects and try to decide, do we have the bandwidth or the resources to even accept this project? And if so, who's going to? We can use things like demand forecast based upon all those requests and the active projects to use visualized heat maps to see where we're over and under allocated and where we're constrained. We can also assign specific resources that are submitted to us with requests using an engagement process or a resource negotiation project to help project managers interact and collaborate with the functional or resource managers on a more effective basis within the solution. We can even manage large programs, meaning if you have multiple projects that make up a program and you want to look at this not just from an individual project by project basis, but look about programs at a higher level, we can start setting program standards, segregate program segments, and actually look at things from an aggregate program perspective rather than just the individual project perspective. So those of us that are managing large programs like a digital transformation program can either look at it more granularly or at the more macro level. And then on the execute side of things, we can boost efficiencies with very self-reliant teams. We're empowering those team members to be able to go in and propose changes, submit time and task updates from anywhere, whether it be in the browser on their computer, whether it be on their tablets or their phones. The idea is we build these schedules, we assign resources to these things, and then they in turn can see what's on their plate across all projects and work. They can enter time and task status updates for their elements from their devices, and then submit time and task entries on those devices to maintain productivity no matter where they are. It basically also empowers team members to suggest new tasks to the project manager and have that come through the project manager's approval process to see if it's something that they should accept into the project plan. Essentially, there's also team types of assignments in here where you can assign things to a team or a group, and then people from that group can self-assign themselves if you set it up that way, so that we can have more flexibility on a team-based type of resource management. And then you can also assess the impact. So as an individual resource goes to their My Work area and actually can update and provide a status on individual tasks and work elements that they have, the project manager can assess the impact of new and updated work, meaning they can go to an approvals page, see what's been submitted, accept or reject the changes, but also they can preview what the impact is of accepting that change. So there's some kind of pro forma look ahead saying, if I accept this change, what is going to be the impact on the schedule and the baseline plans? And is this something that we would need to adjust to accommodate and communicate to the rest of the organization? Also, visualization is really key. Just project level by project level status reports, having those things be a natural output of the process. I think one of the key things we see today is that people are actually spending lots of hours each month or each week, whatever the reporting cycles are, manually cobbling together reports from a variety of data sources and spreadsheets, maybe putting them into PowerPoints with screen captures and manually re-entering certain data that's there. The idea of Project Online is, with its reporting, is that you can create powerful status reports that become a natural output of the process. If you update the data, the reports are ready to go. And they can have all different kinds of formats. They can have the more modern burn downs that Agile types of projects are using, cost overviews, over allocated resources, even earn value if you want to be. But the idea is that you can rely on built-in dashboards and reports to communicate status very easily as a natural output and save that however many days of effort it is to do that status reporting. Redirect that effort into more productive things to help further the causes of the project rather than just reflect the reporting status. And you can gain at-a-glance portfolio insights. So not just project level reporting, but be able to look at this stuff from a portfolio level and get insights and analysis on that. Not just data dumps, but real analysis of how things are going on in your project, where things are ahead or behind, and use it as a decision support tool so that your executives and your folks that are in a position to make these decisions can make more informed and timely decisions and really take action while there's still time or it's early enough in a project, for example, to have an impact. And then there's the collaboration pieces. Basically, you can leverage the Microsoft Cloud very effectively, more so than we were able to do on premise, towards better outcomes in collaboration. Basically, project online becomes part of your overall Office 365 experience, meaning just like you're using other business productivity tools like your email, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Skype, Yammer, whatever it might be, the idea is that this just becomes another part of that experience. It's added into the Office 365 waffle. And the idea here is within the context of your project management process, you can actually go to tasks and actually right from there, communicate, email, IM, the individuals that you're working with right from within the context of the work that you're doing project related or in the context of the project management process. And the idea here is with cloud basis, you can connect from anywhere and also accommodate the needs and the accessibility of geographically dispersed teams. Once again, as I said before, using mobile apps for collaboration on the go. And by having distributed updates on a more frequent basis and not waiting for status meetings when we corral people in a Skype meeting or around a conference table, we can actually accelerate decision making, and the turnaround time on getting status from people is much, much quicker. And it just streamlines the overall information sharing piece as well. We can collaborate on all pertinent information that's important to us. We can share plan updates with team members, so there's one source of the truth, so that we reduce the time of consuming status meetings and really put our meetings as the focus on, we know where we're at, now what do we do about it? And so really make those meetings more high value. It just provides a single repository or one source of the truth for all information on schedules, on documents and artifacts, etc. We're no longer passing those things around via email. And we also can host all Teams discussions in one place using a social feed. So for example, project specific information or news or discussions that you have can all be handled through that news feed right in the project workspace that we have set up for each and every project. And things in those workspaces that can also be handled, things like managing your risks, your issues, your change requests, your lessons learned. All those can be handled from a collaborative hub for each project. And then the insights, really the reporting and the analysis that you're getting out of this. We talked about a little bit this earlier on, but just out of the box dashboards and report to quickly gain insights and the charts that you might have, and understand the different dimensions of project information, once again, as a natural output. And as you notice, it's part of that whole Office 365 experience and the project application or service within that Office 365 world. And we can derive advanced analytics with Power BI. I can't stress strongly enough that the direction with the Microsoft Cloud with Office 365, that the reporting and analytics and BI push is really, by Microsoft, is moving towards Power BI. And the powerful visualizations and the high performing and flexible dashboards and reports that you can make, and the variety of visualizations that you can actually present to leadership and to your teams is just the capabilities and the possibilities are growing on a weekly basis. The key here is that you have a natural output or an OData feed from Microsoft PPM Project Online, financial systems and other sources, so you can bring together combined reporting from a variety of different places. Not to mention you can get value from this Power BI platform for other purposes other than your PPM needs. It also gives you the ability to really extend and enable or empower your business users by being able to do ad hoc analysis with natural language query, which is essentially the equivalent of typing in the words you would do, say, in a search engine to make a search request and make a request, and it would actually build a report based upon the natural language query that you entered in there. We'll show some of that here today. Also, you can access Power BI reports and dashboards virtually from anywhere, because Power BI has a mobile application that allows you to see the dashboards, the same reports and the same tiles in your dashboard on your mobile device as you would see if you were working on your PC. And then the extensibility piece. This is really about, tailoring these Microsoft solutions and PPM solution to really fit you and the things that are unique to your organizations to complement the best practices that are already built in to the solution. So managing projects your way really is about being able to use different things like a single hub for all work. Project Online is a portfolio management solution, and as such is designed to be able to manage and provide visibility into all of your investments or projects. And as leadership wants to see how their investments are tracking that they've decided to invest time, money, and resources into, it gives you a single place to do that. Now, there may be other tools in use other than Microsoft Project and Project Online. For example, a popular one is Agile tools, such as Visual Studio Team Services, VSTS, which is the cloud version of what was TFS, or Jira as a third party, or so that's another popular one, is that we can leverage those as execution tools on the Agile side because they're more conducively built to use in more of an Agile framework, but then have that information automatically and seamlessly feed back into the portfolio for up-to-date status, even though those are being managed in an Agile fashion. And you can actually enable teams. One of the things you get with Office 365 is Office 365 Planner, and you have simplified, more Kanban style type of management of work. You could use that as the execution piece on your schedules and your tasks and have the ultimate status feed into that same portfolio on an automated basis if you don't want to execute your plan using Microsoft Project or Project Web Access. The idea, the possibilities here are ever growing on the execution tools that might feed into that holistic central Project Online portfolio. And just enhancing and tailoring the PPM experience. With Power Apps today, you can create codeless PPM apps. Even non-developers can actually develop apps that actually augment or supplement the things that are native into the solution. And even partners like Wickersoft. There's a store and an ever-growing number of specialized PPM add-in apps that are fully supported by Project Online in the Microsoft Cloud, so that you can do things to supplement what's native capability in there and choose what's in there by fully vetted and blessed and accepted apps within that store, within that Microsoft store. And you can also leverage partner solutions. For example, Wickersoft. We have our Project Connect platform that basically has productized connectors that, in that concept of having Project Online being the hub of all portfolio level information and project information, we actually have connectors that will actually bring that data from the Jira, Visual Studio, your CRM systems like Salesforce, your ITSM solutions like ServiceNow, be able to bring that data in seamlessly and make it part of the total portfolio set of information. And those productized connectors allow you to do things without having to develop one-off custom integrations and workflows, though you can do that with the capabilities that are available to you in the Microsoft Cloud. And then really, if you want to really take it to the next level, the next level of intelligence, if you want to really maximize this, what's really emerging is leveraging this data with things like Cortana Intelligence Suite to perform predictive analytics and provide you better insights and suggestions. Even the idea of connected Internet of Things devices, so getting feedback from sensors and other things that might be out there in your devices to basically feed in when certain project or enhancement work might be done. And even like Microsoft bots that might help take some labor-intensive or more repetitive and tedious types of tasks, and being able to perform those for you or assist you on those things can actually make those things better over time. And these things are emerging. They're here today, but they're emerging and getting more mature as we speak. So the idea here is that this platform is not going to, you're not going to hit any dead ends with this platform with Microsoft, and their leadership in the cloud services business is really outstanding in how far they've come in such a short period of time. And then overall, if you're a Microsoft customer, leveraging and maximizing the value of your investment and your commitment to the Microsoft tools and platforms, it really applies to the PPM experience as well. So if we look at it, first of all, Microsoft Project is still the predominant and ubiquitous and almost universal project management desktop planning tool and scheduling tool that's out there in the marketplace, meaning it's everywhere. And if your customer, your company is probably no exception, is that to some degree somewhere people are either using Microsoft project schedules, or you might have customers or clients that are using Microsoft project schedules that you have to deal with. And there's more than 20 million users worldwide at 15,000 companies. And extending this to supporting Project Online and doing your tactical work in there, it really makes sense to leverage the knowledge and skill that people have in that scheduling tool and just apply it on a more enterprise or more PPM portfolio level basis. And the idea is you can also harness just the general power of the Microsoft Cloud. In this whole digital transformation area, a broader cloud strategy, people are moving more towards Office 365 from Microsoft for their general business productivity, and even into Azure in the cloud for their other cloud needs. But the idea is that we can leverage this, and Microsoft PPM becomes just one component of a one Microsoft cloud ecosystem. So for example, leveraging Power BI, integrating with Office 365 and VSTS and Dynamics 365, it really is a one Microsoft play so that you can handle all these dimensions within the Microsoft realm. Even in Dynamics 365, you even have financial and ERP in there. So you can actually, depending on the nature of your business, you can actually manage the entire business leveraging these solutions in the Microsoft Cloud. So from a Project Online perspective, there's a whole slew of benefits. And some of them are really about the benefits of cloud versus on-premise. In on-premise solutions before, you used to have to, in order to enter the game, you had to commit to infrastructure and servers, database servers, web servers, application servers, and then dedicate people who could maintain those, provide the patches and the upgrades over time. And the cost of that it was high. But beyond that, think about this as being just part of the Office platform, meaning it's just part of your Office 365 experience, meaning you don't have to tackle another technology and have skill sets to maintain this other than the ones you already have. It also provides a single governance model, meaning when we talked about intake and business cases, you could have an intake and investment approval on these projects in a very consistent fashion for all projects that come in of all types. Yet you can have the diversity to actually use different scheduling or execution tools like we talked about with Microsoft Project, with Office 365 Planner, with Visual Studio, etc., but still feed into that single governance model within Project Online. And in familiar ground, a lot of the applications we're talking about in Office 365, there's an online version and still the desktop version, meaning people are going to be familiar with the look, feel, functions, and just the overall context of the applications. And we're just tying them together better through a Microsoft Cloud experience. And by going to the cloud, it's minimal upfront cost. It's a pay-as-you-go monthly fee and subscriptions on these things. So instead of having all that upfront capital expense to stand up these and all these big expenses to get in the door, you can get a very minimally in this cloud just by basically turning it on. And you can scale as the business matures, meaning with Microsoft Project Online, if you're a less mature and emerging project management organization, you can actually start and build this, or configure this, I should say, in a more lightweight fashion. And then you can actually add different capabilities as your organization matures. Also from a scaling perspective, you don't have to size servers and anticipate the load and the needs that you might have. In the Microsoft Cloud, as your users need more computing resources, it scales automatically in the Office 365 world and the Project Online world to have the resources from a computing power perspective that you'll need when you need it. The Microsoft's visual simplicity and the tile-based type of approach on this really kind of keeps it simple for people and gets it easy for them to help them adopt and get into the solution early on. And we also have advanced functionalities for those folks that have highly mature organizations, meaning portfolio management, portfolio analysis and optimization, things the steering committees want to see to make project selections, and just larger enterprise capabilities are there. You don't have to expose those right away if you're just getting started, but the idea is that there's enough capability in there for even the most mature project organizations. We talked about the strong reporting and the fact that these are really designed to be decision-making tools and not just data dumps that are out there today. And overall, going back to Forrester and quoting them again, they, in their analysis, have said that there's real economic impact and benefits or outcomes to moving to an online PPM solution. Just the ROI numbers, the net present value per user, very short payback periods, and just total benefits overall on average are things. Now, obviously, for your organization, you can plug these into numbers, but improved visibility into project performance reduces cost overruns on projects. Better resource management led to more optimal use of resources that led to savings. Reductions in labor costs, reductions in the time it takes to allocate resources to project, average increases in resource utilization and better productivity by streamlining these processes, and just the overall synergies of integrating this with your Office 365 experience has benefits in the loss of productivity from task switching from technology to platform that people experience over time. So the idea is there's a lot of economic reasons to do this and benefits to an organization. So with that, let's transition into a demonstration. All right, so as you can see, as we talked about earlier on, I'm looking at a project center in Microsoft Project Online, which is essentially a portfolio of projects. If you notice, it's part of my Office 365 experience, and we're actually into the project application or solution within there. So if you notice, if you bring down your Office 365 waffle, as we call it, you notice that Project and Project Online is just one component of that. Now, being that you might be in here for your email, your Word, your PowerPoint, SharePoint, whatever it might be, you don't have to leave that ecosystem in order to do your project and portfolio management. In this case, I'm looking at a portfolio of projects that's listing projects, and they're actually grouped and summarized by the lifecycle state that they're in right now, which is one view that you could choose. These are ones that are requested, ones that are approved, ones that are in progress, etc. But you can have in here as many different views as you would like, meaning if you want to look at it by, I don't know, by portfolio and look at them by portfolios like this and have it segment and summarize this information by portfolio. Or maybe you might want to say by portfolio and then by programs within the portfolio. Or if you want to do it by applications or by manager or by business unit, you have no limits on the amount of enterprise metadata fields that you'd like to put against these projects. So you can categorize, slice and dice these and summarize these in a way and filter them in ways that make sense for your organization and in your language and in your terminology. Now, in that regard, you can have as many different project types and templates in here as you like. Natively in the solution, if you just wanted to use the project center and add projects to the mix, you can come through here and actually you can establish enterprise project types, and you can see there's a lot of them in my demonstration site. But the idea, this could be based on size of project, it could be based on the nature or subject matter of a project. So in cases, I'm looking at new product development or merger and acquisition projects or Six Sigma project, etc. The idea is these are not just Microsoft Project Schedule templates, even though that's one component of it. It also represents in each of these project types a particular workflow that you may have aligned with that particular project type. So for example, a robust multi-step workflow might be conducive for a large capital project, but maybe a small enhancement project might have a more express route in there, and maybe not as robust or detailed a workflow as you go on through. So those are just some examples of how you might leverage that type of thing. And then each of these work types, project types would actually have potentially its own project workspace or SharePoint site automatically created, but each one could be different based upon the project type and the nature of the documents and the artifacts and the content you'd like to see in those. Now, that's how you would actually select one of those and add a project in there. But you could also do this from the ideation side of things. So for example, as I said early on, you could capture project requests or ideas from internal and customers around the organization. And notice here, I've got a view that's actually showing me different things like what project type or category it is, who it's requested by, what their statement of estimated benefits and costs might be. You might talk about things like risk and prioritization, and even generate an early prioritization score. You can even have people vote on these things kind of Yelp style, as you would like to, in order to kind of do some early vetting long before I do some business case. So the idea here is when we create a new item in a project request, and these forms are totally configurable and easily configurable based on the nature, but our assumption here in this demo is that these early ideas don't require a ton of information, but you might want to put in what it is and describe it. You might want to categorize it in some way. You might want to put in some value or rationale as to why it should be considered for approval, and maybe even put some other things like benefits, costs, and how it aligns with business strategies in order to generate that type of preliminary project score that you might want to see. And the idea here is that when you go through a workflow process or approval process, or even explicitly choose create project, you can then promote this request to a requested project over in that project center and project online that we saw early on, meaning it's a continuum from the early idea stage through formal project request all the way through to becoming a potential project in the portfolio. And these different things can go to different levels of detail. I showed you a very simple form, but these intake forms can even manifest themselves and be even more complex if you want them to be. And we have pre-configured solutions here that allow you to have these types of tab solutions that basically will provide a synopsis of an overall set of business case information and narrative, along with being able to have the ability to capture all dimensions of information that might be in your business case. So for example, as we go through these different tabs, notice all the different data points that now were not in that simple idea form. This really gets down to more business case level of information and putting things like capital and expense costs, hardware and software, labor, travel, etc. And even other things that we may have already associated with this along the way, like purchase orders and invoices that may have been logged to focus into things like overall cost. The idea here is that these intake processes and forms and workflows can be designed to reflect the level of rigor that you need within your organization. And things like this are already pre-built and pre-configured in a pre-configured package from Wickersoft. Now, when those requests come in, the other thing you might want to do is portfolio analysis. So for example, as those things come in and you have in-flight and you have projects under consideration, you can actually come in and do portfolio analysis in here to select the projects that make the most sense. And this is really scenario based. So for example, I could come in and look at my existing portfolio and select the projects that I want to be part of this analysis. And it's doing what we call a pairwise comparison, meaning it's looking at the information you've entered, the the strategies you've aligned with, the costs that you've put in against these projects, and the benefits and things like that you're trying to achieve out of there. And here, for example, I'm looking at a set of portfolio items that basically, based on a cost constraint of $4 million, it says, given that, it's saying these are the projects that I should do, given the value that I'll have to the organization. And by the way, you can also force in projects that you have to do that aren't up for discussion, regulatory projects, CEO pet projects, whatever it might be. And you can even force out things in a particular scenario if you like as well. But it's telling me that I should be doing these projects if I have $4 million for the organization. And it's basically saying, given $4 million, I can really only achieve 66% of the value of this portfolio. That's representing, if you look at all the projects that you have in the mix, 100%, if you did all of them, would be 100% of the value of the proposed portfolio. And it's saying, given that $4 million constraint, 66% of that value based upon the relative priority and weighted score of these projects would drive up 66% of the value should we select those. Now, ultimately, I may want to objectively say to leadership or my steering committee, what if I had another $1 million? If I had this up to $4 million, $5 million, it now gets me up to 83% of the value of that portfolio. And what it's doing is it's doing what's called an efficient frontier analysis, where it's basically saying for any dollar value of spend, what's the most value I can get out of the portfolio? And the most efficient frontier is the best outcome that you can expect. Now, given forced-in projects and other dimensions, we have two scenarios that are driving us below that optimum line at $4 million and $5 million spends. But notice the $5 million is more close to optimal on the efficient frontier line. And in this case, notice what's moved in from that $4 million up to this $5 million strain and what's been moved out as part of that portfolio of constraints. And the idea here is you can also look at it then from a resource constraint perspective. So the idea is I'm looking at this from a resource perspective. We have the budget to do this, say we had the $5 million, but what do we have from the resource planning and resource capacity that we have to be able to do this? Now it's saying here that even I could do 83% of the value if I had $5 million. What it's saying here is given the resources I have, if I have no additional resources, it's telling me that I can get just under 54% of the value of this portfolio based upon resource constraint. Now I could do other things like I could change the start dates and stagger these dates more to try and fit more projects into this scenario. But given the current layout and the current timelines, this is what the answer is. Now I could go in here and say, well, what if I hired 6 more resources and then recalculate that scenario? And once again, I'm not changing any of the core data in the solution. What this is all scenario-based analysis. Now, if I got 6 resources, I can get that up to 72%, almost 20% bump in this if I hired 6 more resources. And given the time constraints, I'll just show you a quick report, but I can show you that it will also tell me what resources I would need to fulfill that scenario and know what I would have to either hire or contract in order to make that happen. Notice I need 3 infrastructure resources on these 3 projects over these durations to this degree of effort. I need a QA resource and 2 support resources. Now I'm getting information not only how I'm short, but what I'm short and what I would need to actually do this. So we can go, this could be a demo in and of itself, but the idea is this helps us select the right projects like we talked about earlier on. And then from a resource management perspective, Microsoft Project Online has a centralized resource pool, and most folks in Office 365, these are linked to your Active Directory, Azure Active Directory in the cloud. And the idea is that you then have these resources, which you, just like with the projects, you can have whatever categorizations or metadata you'd like against these resources. And then basically you can group and select them by this different criteria and ultimately report on them. But here, if I'm looking at, say, the business analyst role, I can very quickly in here, natively within the system, go in and look at things like a capacity engagements heat map. I can see what resources are on what projects and to what degree they might be over or underloaded, red being overloaded, blue being underutilized, and green being within a threshold of more optimum allocation across these different projects. And I can look at these by the individual, or I can look at things like graphs, et cetera, to tell me whether my group is over and under allocated in general as a whole. And I can see it looks like my business analyst group is okay, but it looked like I have some individuals that might be over allocated within that group. Okay, I can even get down to level of resource assignment where I can go down and say, out of my team, what are my people actually assigned on? And if I just want to know tactically what tasks they've been assigned to, I could go down here and I could look at, say, Lisa, and I can see she's only on 1 project, but I can see Lisa now has a timeline that is laid out like this, where I might look at, say, Amy and see that Amy's on 3 different projects, and I can individually look at which projects and what tasks she's on and get an idea just from a sheer workload standpoint or sheer number of elements she's assigned to, whether or not she's over or under allocated. Okay. From a capacity planning perspective, we can actually do FTE-based requests. And the idea is that your manager can then come in here and then the resource manager can look at resources that have been requested on these projects. And so, for example, I have a business analyst that was requested on this project to do analyzing of requirements. Now, you can go look at the capacity information, look at who might be available from those business analyst ranks, and then very quickly I can come in and say, you can have Lisa on this because she's only on one project at this point in time and it looks like she has the capacity. The idea the information's all in here and it's being aggregated automatically so you can make good decisions and in this case have project managers negotiating or interacting on an effective basis with resource managers. Also, as we go into projects, the idea is you have one source of the truth. We talked about this being a set of projects or portfolio level types of information, but I can also drill into individual projects and get whatever information I need. So for example, if I want to see the schedule, instead of in the old days where I had to send a PDF or send a Microsoft project file and everybody had to have a copy of Microsoft project on their desktop to see the schedule, here I can actually see the one source of truth and see the current schedule of this all readily and available. I can have all the project information or project details I want around this as far as how we categorize the project, what metadata we put around the projects, and these things can all be configured to meet the ways that you'd like to see this and the data you'd like to see against your projects. Another key piece, as I talked about earlier on in the enterprise project types, is you can align a workflow with these projects. So as it goes through, you can have the different workflow steps and we can see where we are in the initiating phase, which elements need to appear at these stages, and I can define what those stages are and really what is needed or what is needed so we can exit each of those stages as we go on through. So these can be configured for each project type you have. Some can be more robust and more rigorous than others. And then the project site. This would get automatically provisioned and created every time you created a project within the system. And this is just an example, but notice I can see a high-level timeline that anyone who has access can see where we're at. I have some assessment of what's late and what's overdue, for example. I have that news feed we talked about for overall conversations. It can come pre-populated with your project documents that are needed for this type of project. And then we can also track things like issues and risks and change requests. You can even have a project calendar or a OneNote notebook for meeting notes and minutes, etc. The idea, the content of this is really up to you by project type on how you'd like to do that. And the idea it's all accessible for the team and makes it readily available for everyone. Once again, one source of the truth, one pane of glass. And I would say this, one of the things we talked about was integration. And one of the things that Wickersoft is a leader in, and Microsoft recommends people to us on this front. Our Project Connect platform in Azure allows us to leverage more than just Microsoft Project as the planning tool to support these portfolio items. So for example, extending in a more connected world, natively, if I selected this social networking integration, and if it was a Microsoft project plan, you could either open it up and show that browser-based schedule like I just showed you, or you could open it up in the full Microsoft project desktop for editing. But let's say it was a lighter weight project and somebody wanted to manage this in Office 365 Planner. They could simply go into here. They could actually, as they selected the project, say, I want to open it up in Office 365 Planner. And it can actually go out and then take you to or create the plan in Office 365 Planner and then be able to manage this in a more Kanban style, card-based way, where you can drag these across the different states, or you can go in and edit the individual elements within here, like whether they're started or not, sub items or punch list items, comments, attached documents, and those types of things. But the updates that happen in here through Project Connect would get automatically passed to the Project Online portfolio, even though the execution is happening within Office 365 Planner. The other piece that we have in here is the idea that you could do more agile projects. So for example, our Fabricam project, I could go in and open this up in Visual Studio. And as we go on through there, you could basically open this up in Visual Studio where more conducive to agile planning, people can plan their backlogs of features, epics, feature stories, tasks, etc., and build that backlog for this particular project or product. And then they can plan these out into iterations or sprints, and people want to manage these typically in their story or their task boards, and much more graphically kind of come through here and basically look and drag these things across the board or update these things and have that information passed back to the portfolio, just like we did with Office 365 Planner. And we also have that same use case available right within with Jira and other third parties, meaning you can have different execution tools for teams that insist on using those other tools, but still have a holistic portfolio made available to you on an automated basis. And then ultimately going through and looking at things like Project Online's reporting, where I said Power BI is really a strength here. And the idea is that through a out-of-the-box OData feed between Project Online and Power BI, you can get robust reporting. So whether it be traditional PPM metrics that you're looking at, bubble charts, or maybe some more agile metrics from the agile projects, those can be combined into common reporting dashboards as you go on through. I could come in here and look at some report packs that we have. The project requests that we had in the ideation phase, you can do some early analysis on those right here and slice and function and say, what are my critical high priority projects in this bubble chart, and look at those and focus on those. What are the ones with high alignment, right? What are the ones with that might be in application development? And we can kind of do that analysis and slicing through here very easily. We can do project portfolio status, where we can start looking at things like, what are my red, yellow, greens? What are my KPIs on here? How many projects are at risk over budget, et cetera? You know, how are we doing from a schedule perspective? Do I want to focus this down on projects that are overdue, and I can filter those things down if I like. I can look at things like cost and how we're doing on cost tracking basis. Are we ahead or behind on cost, and have heat mapping information to tell us where we're ahead or behind. We can look at these things on a time phase basis, where we can look at costs over time. In this case, it's looking by quarter. And many of these are drill-in reports, where if I drilled into Q4, it would take me into months. If I drilled into a month, it could take me down to days. The idea here is that it's very flexible reporting, and the same things are available for resource and resource work, and even elevating your issues and risks that you have in these projects from your project workspaces without having to go into the individual project workspaces to get that information. This also is true for project financials information. It's also true for individual project status, where you can come in here and look at similar information on project status, where you can get individual KPIs and narrative around a specific project, and look at things like individual project milestone achievement and those types of things, and focus and drill that to the next layer of detail. And the resource information we showed you in the Resource Center in Project Online, that's all available to you in a very configurable way right here in Project Online. For example, you could filter this down and say, I want to look at that business analyst role I talked to you about earlier on, and I can come down here and just look at that basic filtering capability. Well, we're running low on time, but the idea here is we can look at utilization across all these folks and get more detailed information, and even get some high-level availability information, and go into a particular role and drill into, say, support, and I can see who's over and under allocated within support in a very ready fashion. I would say two last things is that if we go back to our dashboards, we talked about that natural language query, where you don't need a report developer in order to do this, right? You can come through here and you can say things like, I wonder if I lost connection.
I can still hear you, Jim.
No, I've just lost connection on my on the application. All right, well, what I was hoping to show you today was that you can actually type in things like a web search and actually have it create charts and reports for you on the fly. We'll have to show that to you in another demonstration. Another key piece on here is that you can embed these Power BI reports that I just showed you as live reports in PowerPoints or Word documents. So the idea is you can go in here and look at all the different tabs of information we talked about embedded. And then each time someone opens up this PowerPoint that you've given them or this deck, you could be looking at different informations of project information and use all the filters and things like that as interactive reports, not just screen captures or reports within those documents. Same thing holds true with other things. So you can have a slide with each deck. And let me refresh my login. And the idea here is that you can get that information as you need to. So once again, that project summary information, once again, you can have as many different slides and reports or dashboards as you want into each deck. So I think we're at the top of the hour. I think I've run out of time. I would just say that, let me close out with a couple of last thoughts for those of you that can still stick with us. Mike gave you a good rundown of who we are as Wickersoft. We're a joint venture with Microsoft. We're actually part owned by Microsoft as that joint venture. So we have a lot of experience and we're triple gold certified. We have services that we offer in all the different Microsoft cloud technologies that we talked about here today, in addition to Project Online. And if you want to engage with us further and know how this stuff can be enabled within your organization, we will offer you pre-sales, a free assessment and roadmap of what it would take to get you to this by doing some discovery with you. And we'll even offer you and enable a Project Online trial and have Wickersoft chaperone you and guide you through that trial and do periodic check-ins to make sure your questions are answered. Or we could take this general demonstration I gave you and do it on a more personalized one-on-one basis. We have a whole library of on-demand and upcoming webinars at us.wickersoft.com/webinar, so please check that out. You will be getting a copy of this slide deck, so this information's here, but you can reach us at our contact information below. So with that, I'd just like to thank you all for your time. Thank you for my indulgence for your indulgence on me running a couple minutes over, but hopefully you found some value in the content here today. There sure is a lot to cover because there's a lot in the mix. Thank you again and have a great day.